Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to share with you some culture shocks and a few experiences that stood out for me during my visit in Belgium. So this summer I had a chance to visit a few countries in Europe, and Belgium being one of them. And here are things that I noticed that sort of like shocked me, either from like culture perspective or just experiences that I didn't foresee to have and then I had. So let's get into the video. So the first thing that shocked me was just the idea of having like three official languages in a country. I think as an anxious person or a person who gets easily overwhelmed, I was overwhelmed a lot of times with the language thing. I think because I just can't process. I feel like just to move from like one language to another just needs a lot of mental processing on its own. And it's not like I can speak all the three languages that are official languages of that country, because I only had English. I barely had French. I barely know Dutch, so I only know English. But then I also had a friend who spoke all the languages. But just me as a third wheeler, I was still like very overwhelmed, like having to switch languages here and there. And I think this one time, so I think the story stood out for me. It just shows you how much the language thing was so confusing to me. Like how train stations would have like the name in French and the name in Dutch, for instance. At one point, I almost missed my station because I was looking on the other side of the station where they had the other language, the other name of the station, not the one that I saw before. So I thought it's a different station until my friend told me, no, we've arrived. I'm like, but it's a different station. She's like, no, that's the Dutch name. I was like, so now I need to know. Like, it was just so much overwhelmed because the same thing could be written in Dutch and in French. And because I can't understand the difference, like just memorizing stuff didn't work, so to say. So that was very confusing for me, the first thing. The second shock I'd experienced in Belgium is just how much of the tourism is around the peeing boy, peeing girl, peeing dog. Like, what's the idea of what the peeing? I know I need to read history more. Maybe I understand it, but up until now, I'm still very confused. Like, what's the concept behind peeing that goes hand in hand with like maybe their culture or maybe their history or maybe like, I don't know, like what really inspired this peeing stuff? Like, there's a lot of peeing stuff. There's the peeing dog, there's the peeing boy, the peeing dog. Like, everyone is just peeing. Like, it's what am I missing? But also the idea that the peeing boy is a child, so is the peeing girl. Like, why do they have kids peeing all over the place? I'm like, I'll use ChatGPT for that, but also let me know in the comments down below, like, what's the concept behind this? Because that was very shocking for me. Another shock that I've experienced in Belgium is like how often the officers check the train tickets in the train. And I think this was a shock in comparison to my experience in Berlin. Like in Berlin, they barely check tickets. Like they sort of like trust you to follow the order. They sort of like trust you to follow the rules and just like move around. But in Belgium, it felt like every other step I took, every train I took, there was somebody checking and confirming if your tickets are valid. So I'm like, is it that in Berlin, Germans are so used to like following the laws that they just be like, okay, we know, we trust you. But in Belgium, it's different because like, why are they checking the tickets every other 5 minutes? Like, trust issues? I don't know. But yeah, that was my experience. Another culture shock that I experienced in Belgium is how strong their beer is. Like the beer could go up to 15% or 19% alcohol, which is a shocker for me because I'm from Tanzania and our strongest beer here is 5.8% of alcohol, and that's the strongest. And there's this other beer that is like 4.8 or 5, and people usually like run away from it because they say it's too strong. Only for me to arrive in Belgium and see like beers could go like 15% alcohol. And there's this beer that I had, it's like a fruit beer or something, like it had 8.5% alcohol and it was so nice. So I think those two things, like the fact that the beers have a good alcohol percentage, but also the fact that the taste is not really altered from like the increased alcohol percentage, because I think there's a big notion around that where people always assume like the more percentage of alcohol you have in a drink, the bitter it is. But in Belgium, I tasted like a lot of beers that were like strong, but also they tasted quite well. So that was a shocker for me. Another experience that sort of like stood out for me is how good the chocolates were. I think before visiting Belgium, my perception was that Norway had the best chocolates in Europe. until I went to Belgium. And now that has changed. So I'm waiting to go to Switzerland and see if my perception will change again. But as it stands right now, Belgium has the best chocolates I've ever tried. So I was very happy about that, because now when I have Norwegian chocolates, they don't excite me as much, because I think I've tried a good number of Belgian chocolates that sort of like stood out from the Norwegian, which I used to think were superior to like others. So it feels like my standards, or like my bar quality bar for like chocolates, is going higher and higher the more the good chocolates I try. Another shock that I experienced is the obsession around Belgian fries. Like, hold on, I know. So I know that fries are originally from Belgium, but I think the hype is just, it's just overhyped. Like Belgian fries, like the whole fantasy around Belgian fries, I feel like it's overhyped, because I've tried fries in Belgium in a few places and they didn't stand out. Maybe I went to the wrong places, but I had high expectations because of the hype around like Belgian fries. But then I tried it and it wasn't like that much. It didn't live up to the hype, so to say. It was sort of like, okay. So I'm like, I feel like the idea of like Belgian fries is a bit overhyped. So while I was in Belgium, I had a chance of visiting three places. I visited Brussels, I also went to Ghent, and I went to Ostende. And I think of those three places, Ostende really stood out for me. Like, I loved everything about Ostende. And one thing which was sort of like a culture shock for me in Ostende is just like the number of old people that you have in the streets. It's like, okay, like that was a culture shock for me, because I'm from a town where we don't normally see like older people here going around. And I think there could be a good number of reasons that contribute to that. Maybe it's because our life expectancy is a bit lower than the one in Belgium, but also here there's a culture around people going out of town, or like people going to like remote areas during like their old age. But in Belgium, even in Brussels, I feel like I saw like a good number of old people that in my culture or in my country, they would be expected to sort of like move out of town, but they're still like living their good life. So that was a shocker. And it was very refreshing to see. Like, it's a good perspective. It's a new perspective for me to see and to know like really people shouldn't have to like change their whole life just because they're old. They're still free to like live their life how they want and still like enjoy the good things of in life. So yeah, that was a shock for me. Another experience that I had that sort of like shook me, I think this was in Ghent. And I feel like what shook me the most about Ghent is how much cathedrals there are, like how much cases there are just going around. And it was interesting because you could even use cathedrals as landmarks because there are that many. I feel like in most other countries, most of the other European countries that I've been to, at some point I would use like a certain cathedral as a landmark. And then like as I go around, I know my way from that cathedral as a landmark. But in Ghent, you could hardly do that because every other corner, there's another cathedral that looks exactly like the last cathedral that you saw. So that was nice, but it was also a shock. It's very beautiful, so to say. They have like a lot of cathedrals, they have like a lot of castles. Like, it's just like dreamland in a way. But it was just like funny because in most other European cities, it was like you could barely see like cathedrals, so it was easier to like landmark a cathedral and be like, this is my landmark. But in Ghent, you couldn't do that because there's so many beautiful cathedrals every other corner, and because they're new to me, they look the same to me, all of them. So it was fascinating and funny to like just go through the whole scenario. Another experience that sort of like shocked me in a way, but I think I'd experienced this in more than just in Brussels. I'd experienced this in other European cities as well. Is just how much England boys there is. I'm like, guys, I'm not in England, I'm in Brussels. Why am I seeing UK boys everywhere? I'm like, I feel like everyone in the UK leaves UK for like the rest of Europe. Like, I don't know. Please clarify for me because I feel like I saw more England boys than Belgian boys, honestly. At least when I was going out in clubs and stuff like that. But even in places I was staying, there are like a lot of people from England. And I'm like, what's happening in England? Is everyone living in England for the rest of Europe? Because, it's not making sense. Please let me know in the comments down below if that's like how it is just is like throughout the year, or maybe it was just the season that I traveled that there were a lot of like people from England. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So those are the experiences and the shocks that I experienced in Belgium, and I would love to go back because it was such a beautiful country. Until next time, adios.